Today on Touching Lives.
What God is doing right now with every one of us in this room, whether you like it or whether you don't, He's examining your books. Every day He's examining the books. And He's asking Himself and asking you this question. Is the way you're handling the stuff I've given you on earth proving to me you can handle stuff I give you in eternity?
With hope and encouragement for life, this is Touching Lives with James Merritt.
We're in a series, if you're a guest of ours this morning, we're in a series called Snapshots. Jesus, I believe, if He were alive, physically on this earth today, He would be a photographer. He loved to paint pictures, and what He loved to do was paint pictures called parables. Really, His mouth was a brush that could paint across the canvas of life unbelievable snapshots of what the kingdom of God would look like and what the God of the kingdom looked like, and He did it in what we call parables. Now, a parable is simply a little story that answers a big question. And we're going to look at a parable today that once you read it, if you've never read it, or if you read it or you have read it and you remember it, it's one of those parables that you look at and you think to yourself, I'm not really sure this belongs in the Bible. I'm not really sure this should even be in what we call Scripture. Because on the surface, here's what it looks like the parable is teaching. It looks like there's a guy that literally swindles his employer or his manager and cheats him and lies to him so he can take care of himself, so he can kind of feather his own nest. And it looks like Jesus is actually commending this guy for what he did. He's commending the guy because he manipulated the books and kind of took care of himself. Now, we actually know that since Jesus gave the 10 Commandments and said you shouldn't lie and you shouldn't steal, that He's really not commending the guy for what he did, but it's this aspect of the story that makes this parable so fascinating. In fact, let me be honest. There are two parables. We're going to study another one in a couple of weeks. There are two parables that I think may be the hardest parables to understand that Jesus ever told. One Bible scholar said there are 17 different interpretations of this parable. That's how tough this parable is. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why he told this parable is because of who was listening to it. There was a particular group that was listening to this story, and we find that in verse 14. The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all these things, and they ridiculed Him. If you love money, this parable's for you. Because here's what I want you to do this morning. Take everything that you have, and some of us have more than others, but we've all been blessed to some extent. Take everything you have, your money, your bank account, your 401k, your real estate, your house, your car, your clothes, your stocks, your bonds, whatever it is, and I want you to write this down. This is the whole point of what Jesus is going to tell us this morning. One day, I will have to give an account for my accounts. So I better account for my accounts wisely. One day, you liked that, didn't you? Okay, good. At least one person did, all right? One day, I'm going to have to give an account for my accounts, so I had better account for my accounts wisely. Now, as we read this parable this morning, there are two simple lessons Jesus wants to teach us that will help us keep in proper perspective now listen to what I'm about to say, what we think we own, what we think we have, what we think we possess, all right? Two quick things. We're going to do it quick. All right, number one, we are accountable for the management of what we have. I want you to pay close attention to this story. This is good because it not only has a surprise twist, it has a shocking ending, and it all revolves around a manager. Luke 16, verse 1. He also said to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager. Charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. Now, who do you think we are in the parable? Somebody just take a guess. Who are we? We're the manager, right? We're not the owner, we're the manager, okay? So, knowing what we already know about the manager, let me just give you an application right now. Everything we have is loaned, not owned. All right, let's say that out loud. Everything we have is loaned, not owned, okay? Loaned, not owned, okay? Now look, everything you have, God's given it to you. It's on loan. You do not own it. It's not yours. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God. So to put it another way, you are a manager of everything. You are an owner of nothing. Now remember, the manager knows He's watching the books. He's got auditors. One of these days, I've got to give an account of everything that I have. So, though normally it was the job of the manager to go to the owner to tell him when the bills were coming due, today the owner is coming to the manager and telling him the bill has come due. Verse 2. And he called him and said to him, "What is this that I hear about you? Turn in the account of your management, because you can no longer be manager." So the owner walks into the office one day and he says, basically, "You're fired. I've checked on the books. Books are cooked. I don't know what you've done. Don't know why you did it. Not going to argue with you. You have not done what I've hired you to do. You have not managed my money wisely. I am firing you right now." Now remember, we are the manager. And so what Jesus is saying to this audience right now is, hey, just like this manager one day, the books are going to be audited. Every page is going to be unturned. You're going to give an account to the owner for the way you manage what he gave you. You've got to give an account for your accounts. Yet, except Jesus wasn't just talking about money. He was talking about your life. Matter of fact, sometimes we think the biggest way we're going to stand before God is give an account for our money. That's not the biggest thing. Hey, Jesus said one day you'll give an account for every idle word that you said. You'll give an account for every thought that flashed through your mind. Your whole life you've got to give an account. Paul said in Romans 14:12, so that each of us will give an account of himself to God. He didn't say you give an account of your money. You're going to give an account of yourself. Everything you did, every word you said, every thought that went through your mind. So the manager knows everything's hit the fan. I'm in big trouble. What am I going to do? And whenever you get that phone call and all of a sudden you're slapped in the face, we all do the same thing. First thing we do, hit the panic button, right? He does the same thing, verse 3. The manager said to himself, what am I going to do? Since my master is taking the management away from me, I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. Now, I like what this guy does. This guy's honest. So he asked the key question, what shall I do? In other words, great question. What am I going to do today with what I have to leverage it so I'll get ready for the tomorrow that I know is going to come? And that leads to the second lesson, last lesson. That is, we are responsible to the master for what we have. We are accountable for the managing of what we have. We are responsible to the master of what we have. Now listen to verse, this is where it gets interesting, verse 4. I've decided what to do. He's calculating his mind. Here's what I'm going to do. When I'm removed from management, that is when I no longer have a job, I'm going to work this thing out so people will receive me into their house. They'll take care of me. So, watch what he does. This is really cool. Summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, how much do you owe my master? He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. In other words, the man said, I owe the man 100 measures of oil. He said, not any longer. Now you owe 50. Bye-bye. Next guy comes in. How much do you owe? 100 measures of wheat. He said, no, not anymore. Take down your bill and write 80. Now, let me show you what this guy was doing. This is so slick, so cool. The debt that was owed was a very large debt. 100 measures of oil would be equivalent to about 800 gallons of oil, which would be equivalent to about 3 years' wages for an average worker. Big debt. 100 measures of wheat, that's about 1,100 bushels. That would be enough to feed 150 people for a year. That would be equivalent to about 7.5 years of wages for an average worker. So let me tell you what this manager does. He really reduces the bill by roughly about the same amount in both cases, about 2 years' wages for an average worker. You say, that's really good. But let me tell you why he did what he did and how cool this is. See, what you don't know is what the going interest rate was on oil and on wheat. The going interest rate on oil was 100%. What does he knock off the bill? 100%. The going interest rate on barred wheat was 25%. What does he knock off of the barred wheat? 25%. So you'll notice that he reduces both debts by the interest that is owed. In other words, what he had done was he had transferred these into not interest-paying loans, but interest-free loans. Now you think about this. What if a guy showed up at your house? You got a mortgage payment. Let's say you're paying 5 or 6%. What if a guy showed up at your house tomorrow and knocks on your door and he says, hey, I'm from the bank, could I come in? And he said, yes. And so you go in, you sit down, and you say, do you know what percent you're paying on your mortgage? Yeah, I'm paying 6%. And you got like a 20-year payout? Yeah. Well, no longer. And he says, do you have your mortgage? Yeah. And you bring you the mortgage. He tears it up. Well, what are you doing? Well, if it's okay with you, you don't have any objection, we're going to loan you the same amount of money interest-free. So all the money you're going to pay is just going to go to principal. Seriously. Why are you doing that for me? Will you go to Cross Point? And I love your pastor, and he's a great guy. And I love the dogs. They're a great team. So, I saw the Georgia mailbox out in your yard, so I thought, I'm going to help, I'm going to take care of you, right? Now, let me ask you a question. Would that guy be your buddy? You think you think he might get a Christmas card? You think you might invite him to go with you on family vacation? I mean, you'd be all in. Man, whatever I can do for you, I would do. So listen, watch what this guy has done. You're talking about guys thought this thing out. One stroke of a pen, he's all of a sudden turned somebody who was just a business client before into his best buddy. But the way he does it is just off the chart. He brings them in, he sits them down, and he says to them, what do you owe my master? Now, he already knew what they owed the master. That was his job tonight. He wasn't asking for information. He just wanted to make sure that they agreed on what they owed. And they said, well, we owe this. And he says, okay. He says, we're going to change the bill. But I'm not going to write it down. You're going to write it down. So he has them to record the transaction. He has them to sign it. So when the owner looks at the handwriting, he's going to know these renters made the deal. These renters accepted the deal. They're the ones that agreed to this transaction. But it gets better than that. When the client comes in and the manager says, we're going to change this from 100 to 50. We're going to change this from 100 to 80. He has to assume that he's doing this at the request of the master. So not only is the manager making some brand new friends, not only has he got now some IOUs he can call in, not only do these people owe him big time, but guess what happens? These clients go out of there and they go back to the village and they say, you know that skinflint master that's charged us all these years, these exorbitant interest rates? You're not going to believe what this master has done. He has given us interest-free loans. And the word begins to spread. And this guy who is at one time the most hated guy in the village, he's now everybody's hero. And so this manager, this owner all of a sudden, can you imagine? He's sitting at home one day, and the mailman comes, and he just drops a basket full of thank you notes in his lap. He starts reading, thank you for this interest-free loan. What? Thank you for you. Now I get to send my kid to college. Now my kid can have braces. Now my kid can go to that Christian school. Now I can buy season Georgia tickets. I mean, I get to do all these things now that I couldn't do before. Thank you for your generosity. And this owner puts two and two together. And he gets in his chariot and he rides down to the office and he walks into this office, and you think he would be royally ticked off, but look what he says in verse 8. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. You see, here's what happened. This owner could not go back to the village. You got to go back to the village now and say, oh no, sorry, mistake. Got to restore the interest. You got to pay back everything. I really didn't have anything to do with it. Can you imagine what would have happened? He would have become a pariah in the community. He's already hated to begin with. Now he's the most popular guy in town. If he had gone back and done that, he would have been a pariah. He would have been ostracized. Everybody would have said, you're a cheat, you're a liar. I knew it was too good to be true. And nobody would have ever done business with him again. But now, people love him. He's the man. He gets invited to all the barbecues. Christmas cards are going to come in by the bushels. He's going to get gift certificates. I mean, he's trapped. There's nothing he can do except just keep his mouth shut. And all these people are slapping him on the back saying what a great guy he is. And he said, man, every slap's costing me all this money. But what else can I do? And he looks at that steward and he says, I got to hand it to you, dude. I just got to hand it to you. I'm not commending you for what you did. I am commending you for how you did it. You are one shrewd dude. You are one slick Steward. I got to hand it to you. He had used, listen, he had used what the owner had given him today to make sure he would be taken care of tomorrow. Now, watch this. This is what I'm praying for right in the next 2 minutes. Please let the light come on all over this building. Let's think through what this man had done. He had made a future for himself, watch now, with somebody else's money. Not his money. How much did it cost that steward to make this deal? Cost him a dime. It wasn't his money. It was the owner's money. Now you talk about shrewd, he had leveraged what he had today that he didn't even own to secure the best possible future he was going to have tomorrow. Now, let's give the guy his due. You've got to admit, it's one wise guy to use what he has today to make sure he's ready for what's coming tomorrow and use somebody else's money to do it. Now, is the light starting to come on? Are you getting the picture? Everything you have belongs to God. Doesn't belong to you. It's not owned by you. It is loaned to you. He owns it all. You manage it all. At the end of the day, at the end of your life, it's all going to go back to the owner. So while you're on this earth, you've got a chance right now to use everything that God is giving you today on this earth to make sure it works for you tomorrow in eternity. You know what blows my mind about so many of you in this room? There's so many in this room, you think you got it all together. I just met with a guy just a while ago and came to our early, great guy, young guy. He's going to retire. About 3 months, he's going to retire. And I'm excited. I'm glad he's going to retire. And he's a great guy. And what I'm about to say doesn't apply to him because I know him, and he really does have it together. But here's what blows my mind. There are a lot of you in this room right now, and you think, I got it together. I've got my pension plan. I got it down. I've got my retirement plan. I've got it down. And you know what blows my mind about so many of you in this room? You got a pension plan, you got a retirement plan, but you don't have a giving plan. And you're storing all this stuff up, and you think, man, I have got it together. But it's all going to be gone. You didn't leverage one dime of it for the kingdom. You didn't leverage one dime of it for tomorrow because all you think about is today. And look, I've got a retirement plan. I've got a pension plan. I'm not saying it's wrong. That's not my point. But I want to tell you the most important plan you'll ever have in your life is not your pension plan or your retirement plan. It's your giving plan. Pension plans don't gain anything in eternity. Retirement plans don't gain anything in eternity. Only giving plans do that. And to make sure that you don't miss the point of the parable, Jesus tells us exactly what the parable is intended to teach in verse 9, and I'm going to read it to you in a modern translation. Here's the lesson. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then, when your earthly possessions are gone, they will welcome you to an eternal home. Jesus said, here's the lesson. Use what the Master has loaned you today in such a way that it will receive for you an eternal reward tomorrow. God says, everything you have, you don't own it, I've loaned it. But I love you so much, if you'll wise up and be smart, if you'll leverage it, and if you'll invest it in the kingdom, I'll let you use my money to build up your points. I'll let you use the money that I have given to you. I'll let you leverage it in such a way that you will get an eternal reward. You say, okay, how does that work? The only way you'll have any investment in the world to come is to put it in what's going there, and the only thing that's going there is the souls of humanity. That's all. So let me tell you how it works. Most of you in this room know what a mutual fund is, right? Let me tell you how this works. Have you ever thought about the fact that when you give to the work of this church, you're really investing in an eternal mutual fund? Let me tell you some of the things you're investing in when you give to our church. You're investing in a children's ministry where kids will come to know Jesus, where kids are taught to memorize Scripture, where kids are taught to love and respect their parents. You're investing in a student ministry where young people are being given biblical principles to know how to live productive lives when they get into adult world. You're investing in people to go all over the world building churches, ministering in orphanages, feeding the poor. You're investing in a media ministry that will be this service will be broadcast in all 50 states, 144 countries around the world. 1 million people this week will watch us on television because of your investment. So I just want you to ask yourself a question I bet some of you have never asked yourself one time in your life. Here's the question I'd like for you to ask yourself right now. How many people will come up to me in eternity who I never met, never knew, never spoke to, but they're going to come up and thank me because of the investment I made in their life? You're going to have to give an account for your account. So you better account for your accounts wisely, remembering that if you will use what God has given you correctly, it can do two things for you: have an eternal impact and give an eternal reward. That's what led Jesus to make these last two final climactic statements, and we'll be finished. Listen to what he said in verse 10. One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. And one who's dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? Now, I'll tell you what I find amazing about that last statement Jesus made. He talks about money being a little thing. We think money's a big thing. That's why we love money. We didn't think money's a big thing, we wouldn't love it. But we think money's a big thing. We think money is a huge thing. And I guess in a way, to a lot of us, it's medicine. That's how you send kids to college. That's how you pay bills. That's how you drive a car. That's how you put food on the table. I get all that. And yet Jesus calls it a little thing. Why is money such a little thing to God, and why should it be such a little thing to us? I'll tell you why. Number one, you don't own it. And number two, you can't keep it. You don't own it, you can't keep it. And see, what God is doing right now with every one of us in this room, whether you like it or whether you don't, He's examining your books. Every day, He's examining the books. And He's asking Himself and asking you this question. Is the way you're handling the stuff I've given you on earth proving to me you can handle stuff I give you in eternity? Because if you can't handle little things on earth, what makes you think He would entrust you with big things in heaven? You know, being a pastor, I met a lot of people in deep financial trouble. There are people in this room, and I know some of your stories, you're in deep financial trouble. I met people in deep financial trouble, deep financial trouble, because they just borrowed too much and they couldn't pay it back. I met people in deep financial trouble because they just spent too much money and just didn't know how to manage what they had. You know, in all the years I've been a pastor, I have never met a person in deep financial trouble because they gave too much money to God. I've never met a person that said we had to declare bankruptcy because we were just too generous with God's work. Never. So as I wrap this up, ask yourself these questions and then we're going to pray. Here's the questions. Do I understand all that I have has been loaned and not owned? Next one. Do I have more passion about what I can get or what I can give? Next one. Will there be people who will welcome me in heaven because of how I use what God gave me on earth? Next one. Does the way I've handled my earthly riches prove that God can entrust me with eternal riches? And here's the last one. Which really gives a more accurate picture of my spiritual life? My Bible or my bank account? You think about what Jesus did. He leveraged the 33 short years He had on this planet and spent it and invested it in such a way that you and I can get ready for eternity tomorrow. He was a good steward. What you have has been loaned and not owned. You've got a chance, and you only get one shot to use His money for your eternal good. That's why everything counts.
Did you know that the Bible talks more about money than it does about heaven or hell? God knew that we would need help when it comes to managing our finances, and His Word is full of scriptures to help us make the right decisions. If you're struggling to be a good steward, call Touching Lives today at 800-413-1131 and let's pray together. Whether in the world of entertainment or education, storytelling is one of the most powerful forms of communication known to man. Jesus knew this. He often told stories as He taught during His years of ministry on the earth. He used parables to give us insight into God, His kingdom, and how we should represent Him and His kingdom as followers of Christ. In the series Snapshots, Dr. Merritt takes a fresh look at 8 of Jesus' parables and highlights their importance to us today. Discover new insights from these timeless messages and learn to see the world through the lens of grace. Order your copy of Snapshots by calling 800-413-1131 or go to touchinglives.org. At Touching Lives, we take stewardship very seriously. We understand that our faithful donors have entrusted us to ensure that every dollar is stretched to make the greatest impact possible for the kingdom. We are grateful for your support, and we continue our commitment to good stewardship as we share Jesus' message of hope together.